What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports. We are here on the Big Ten channel at the voice of college football, continuing our 2022 schedule previews. Maryland is up next. Here is the schedule for Maryland, and if you look back at last year's schedule, and this team finished 7-6, had a pretty good year. The non-conference schedule, they did have to play West Virginia last season. And then you look at the rest of their games, they had to play Iowa out of the West. That wound up being a blowout. That was, I think there was a lot of hype for that game, thinking that was going to be a big game early in the year. Iowa wound up winning in a blowout. They lost to Minnesota on the road, another game against the West, and they won a close game against Illinois. So they didn't do great against the West last year. Let's look at who they play outside of the division this year. They'll play Buffalo, at Charlotte, and SMU. So no West Virginia this year. A pretty easy non-conference schedule. SMU, the toughest game that they have there in the non-conference. And then out of the West, they'll play Purdue, Northwestern, and Wisconsin on the road. Pretty tough schedule there. I mean, to me, you're not really going to have, when you look at who you play out of the West, it's going to be about the same for everybody. Unless you can get like Illinois and Northwestern both on your schedule, it's going to be about the same. Now, you want to at least get one of those two teams. Of course, some teams are going to they're going to not get to play Northwestern or Illinois, and who knows, Northwestern might wind up turning it around. You never know what you're going to get from that team. But I would say all in all, you know, it's pretty average about compared to the other teams out of the East, looking at who they play out of the West. So let's look at the schedule and go game by game. They start off with Buffalo on September the 9th. Then it's at Charlotte on the 10th, SMU at home on the 17th. So they play all three of their non-conference games right out of the gate, get them all out of the way early. And really no reason why this Maryland team cannot be or should not be 3-0 heading into Big Ten conference play. But it gets tough right away. They'll play Michigan on September 24th on the road. A tough matchup there. Then Michigan State after that on October the 1st. So very, very tough start to their Big Ten schedule with Michigan and Michigan State. Then it's Purdue, also I think going to be a tough game. Indiana on the road, a winnable game for Maryland, but probably won't be easy, especially playing that one on the road. And then it's Northwestern after that. So the schedule, you get I wouldn't call it a break because they could lose to Indiana and Northwestern, but it gets a little easier there in the middle of the late part of October. They get a bye week after Northwestern, and then you go into the month of November with three tough games in a row. On the road at Wisconsin, on the road at Penn State, then they'll get a home game against Ohio State and finish things out with Rutgers. So when I look at this schedule overall, I'm looking at two separate 3-week stretches that are going to be tough. You have Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue. Those three games in a row I think are going to be tough. Then you have Wisconsin, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think those three games are going to be tough. But other than that, a very manageable schedule for Maryland. So if they can take care of business in their other 6 games, we could definitely get back to a bowl game this year. But if they're going to really take that next step, I mean, you're going to need to win probably one out of those 3 games in each of those stretches. So with Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, they're going to have to win one of those games. Wisconsin, Penn State, Ohio State, they're going to have to win one of those games if they want to get up to maybe like an 8-4 type season and take that next step. So I think that's going to be hard. I think the goal for Maryland probably really is just to get to a bowl game when you do have these tough games on the schedule. Good news is you have some easy wins. You have some winnable games out there, but then at the same time, about half their schedule is pretty tough as well. So it's, you know, half of the schedule is pretty easy, half the schedule is pretty tough. And so it makes for an interesting schedule there, especially the way the games are divided up with 3 tough games in a row and 3 tough games in a row. So we'll see if Maryland, see how they do with this schedule. But all in all, not a terrible schedule, but definitely a schedule that'll be a tough one for a team like Maryland.